I really appreciate you showing up to find out what's going on. We do have two very exciting guests today, one being Vicki Quakes-Ferris, and then we have Jeff Spees. Vicki is going to come up first. She's with the Empowerment Network, and after Vicki, we're going to have Jeff with MAPA come up and tell us what's exciting, what's coming around the corner.
Yep.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
All right. It's a pleasure. And thank you, Juanita, for allowing me to actually be able to talk a little bit about Christmas in the Village. This is something that we've been doing for now 7 years, which I cannot believe. But it is something that's very, very exciting that we feel is a new tradition for North Omaha. I do have some handouts because there's some things that I want you to be able to leave here with, so that not only are you hearing me, but you're able to actually take some things with you, so that if you have any questions, you can just kind of take a look at the document. But what I've given you first is like a fact sheet, and it just basically tells you in terms of when the event itself is going to take place, and that's going to be Saturday, December 2nd, from noon until 5 p.m. between 24th and Burdett and 24th and Ohio Street. Christmas in the Village, just to give you a little bit of background in terms of why it started or how it started, we have what's called the North Omaha Village Master Plan. And within that plan, there's a lot of development that we've been wanting to take a look at in terms of North Omaha. What are some of the things that we can take a look at in terms of revitalization and bringing North Omaha back to where it originally was, but then also beyond? And so we didn't want to wait until there was brick and mortar and a lot of people coming down. We said, you know what, let's create something or have something to bring people down in this area. And certainly there's businesses like LaFleur's and some others that are down here, but we really wanted to draw people down here to really support the businesses, but then also have something fun in terms of having families and children remember something during the holidays. We know we've got the holiday lights that are downtown. There's a number of things that are going on in Xarvin and some of Midtown. And we said, you know what, North Omaha deserves to have something as well, so that their children can actually have something like Santa. And actually we got a black Santa, because I don't know about you, but there's a lot of kids who actually, and parents, they grew up and Santa was one of the things that they remember. So we wanted to have Santa as part of Christmas in the Village. And so again, just bringing people back down in this area before we, had all of this development done. So when you take a look at that, we really started out with the Empowerment Network, OADC, and then I believe it was maybe Nebraska Arts Council, but it was really small. And we just said, you know what, let's have every partner that is along that corridor have something where the kids can come in and then, have an activity or something fun that they can do. So the Omaha Star, they had some things going on. OEDC had some things going on. We had bags for the families, the children, so that they can actually start putting things in their bag as they were going from, building to building. And so from 2011, we said, you know what, how can we expand this? So we had more community partners and more folks that were on board. And so, roll, 7 years forward, and it's become one of the tradition that a lot of children and families really look forward to. Matter of fact, there's one young man who actually really looks at 24th Street as Christmas in the Village because that's the only time he comes down here. So when his parent brings him down here, he says, oh, we're going to Christmas in the Village, and it could be July. But again, that's what he's, how he's thinking about the event itself. And so when you look at really what's taking place, we really wanted to, again, be able to support the businesses that are down here, but then always add something new, because we've had families that have come down every year, and so there's always like, okay, what something different can we do so that it's kind of live and it's fresh. But I'll tell you some of the highlights that, parents and kids always look forward to is the camel, the live nativity scene. Of course, Santa, he always has a long line. The face painting, and so on and so forth. So what you have in your hand is just some of the activities that are going on this year. And again, with the Fairdale Village Marketplace, that opened up last year, so they're really celebrating their 1-year anniversary this year. Ms. Ella with Neighborhood Action in Fact, we've partnered with them in OIC. We've also partnered with Family Housing. They have the free photos. We have free carriage rides. The first year we had one carriage ride. That was so popular that we ended up having to do two. So one pickup is in front of OEDC and another pickup is in front of OSBN, Omaha Small Business Network. Speaking of OSBN, they're going to be the candy cane lane again, so you can go in and you can get candy, cotton candy. The Holiday Boutique, that is a huge opportunity for folks who want to shop during the holidays to go down and actually support a lot of our small business owners. You can purchase anything from jewelry to the Cupcake Nerds to clothing. There's just a whole different variety of things that you can actually purchase within the Holiday Boutique. That is taking place at Love's Jazz and Art Center. So this year we're looking at having not only the main level with vendors, but actually the upper level as well. Then we also have live outdoor music. So how many of you know where the Dreamland Park is at? Okay, in case you don't know, or maybe you've seen it and just didn't know, that was Dreamland Park. How many of you know where Family Housing is at? Okay, the statues with the trumpet and so on, that's Dreamland Park. And so, so that's where we have the live outdoor music. I'll tell you, last year was the first year that we were not able to have it outdoors because of the snowfall. And it was very beautiful, but it was falling just a little bit too heavily. So we ended up moving it into the Rockets Canteen restaurant, which was huge because, again, they've got great business. But we have folks like Kathy Tyree, we had Millicent Crawford, and several other artists that were there and performing wonderful music. Then you have OEDC, and I think the last 2 years they've actually rented a huge tent. And this year they're going to have Mrs. Claus Cookie Shop where the kids can actually come in and they can decorate their own cookies. They're going to have Breaking with Rudolph, face painting, and many, many other things that's going on. The Union for Contemporary Arts, they're having what's called Raku Fire, I forget what it's called, but it's called Raku Pottery. And so you actually make your pottery outdoors, and this is something, again, the kids and the parents can, they can actually make their own pottery, and then they can, have it dry, and then they can come back and they can pick it up. So a lot of interactive types of activities are going on. Another piece that I wanted to pass out to you is just, we're actually finalizing the flyer, but this, again, just kind of gives you something that you can take a look at in terms of the activities that are going on. And then I have kind of like a photo gallery. So if you have not been at Christmas in the Village, and maybe let me back up, how many of you have participated or attended Christmas in the Village? Okay. How many of you have not, and this is going to be your first year? Okay, good. That's good, good, good. And actually, what is Snowballs?
We're going to do Cooler Cocoa.
Cooler Cocoa.
Switch up for the season.
Oh, I love that. I love that. So,
Cocoa sounds good.
So, for those who want to purchase cocoa or something hot, I said a hot toddy, but it's not a hot toddy. No, baby, you can't have that. But again, a new business that's, participating in the Village. And then LaFleur's. And again, putting LaFleur's on the map. And even though we don't stretch down this far, because again, we're blocking between Burdett and Ohio, and that's a long stretch. So from a public safety standpoint, that was the area that we could block. And so we're working with Omaha Police Department so that we can block from 23rd and, for instance, Lake Street all the way up to 25th. And we'll have detour signs so that traffic can move accordingly without any, mishaps. There have been a couple of cases where people have actually moved my barricades, and we found them, a moving vehicle on the street, and so we've had to quickly get them off the street. But again, when you're talking about carriage rides, you're talking about a drill team that actually starts out the whole event, just kind of like a Macy's parade. And so the drill team will start out. You've got Mr. and Mrs. Claus that's in the carriage ride. They'll go around, they'll drop off Santa. Actually, it's Santa and Mrs. Claus. So they'll drop off Santa at Family Housing and then take Mrs. Claus on to her cookie shop. So it's something where all the kids, all the families can enjoy. And speaking of the bags, this is a bag from the 4th annual event, but this is a bag that we order and each of the families can, get one of these. We try to have wristbands so that we can try to keep track of the count and how many folks we have attending. The first year we had about a couple thousand people here for the first year, and it's grown to close to 4,000 or over. And so we don't know what we're going to get this year, but weather, I'll tell you, it's interesting because weather has not kept anyone from this event. People just dress in layers. And the good thing is that you can walk, but you're going into different buildings and you're doing different activities. So it's not like you're outside for a long time unless you're there to, enjoy Dreamland Park and whatever's going on there. But that's the beauty of it, is that you can walk, go in a building, enjoy that, activity, come out and whatnot. We'll also have food vendors. So the food vendors are going to be located on the OSBN parking lot on the on the south, I think it's the southeast corner. But anyway, there's about 6 or 7 food vendors that will be there as well. So Louisiana Food Truck and TLC Down Home Foods and several others. The photos that you see there is just kind of, again, a depiction of some of the things that are taking place. I do want to mention the holiday lights. One of the things that through the Sherwood Foundation, and I believe maybe one other, but definitely the Sherwood Foundation, is that they decided and said that they would put lights, because we kept asking for them every year. They had lights downtown, and we understand everybody is, I guess, raising dollars to have those lights, and we said, we'd like to have some too. So they ended up putting lights, and I believe it starts around Burdett area, 24th, and then goes down to about maybe Ohio Street. And so, and we have asked before, if we could get it extended, but when you are not the ones that are paying for the lights, you can only request. And so they said, this is where we're going to put the lights at. And we're very appreciative of where the lights are at. Because I'll tell you something, if you haven't come down here in the evening when the lights are on, it's a beautiful, beautiful sight. And so that's one of the things that we really wanted to have, was lights similar to what they have downtown. So again, the lights will come on, I believe it's after Thanksgiving. We're going to have a special lighting ceremony right after about 5 o'clock, because Styles of Evolution is giving away a 32-inch flat screen TV. And so in order to actually be in the drawing, you have to stop by their shop. So that's something to think about. Styles of Evolution. So that's Don and Yvonne Johnson, right there, right across from Mount Moriah. It's right there on the corner of 24th and Ohio. Right there on the corner. If you know where Love's Jazz is at, then you come on down, you got the barbershop, and then they're right there on that corner. So they're the ones that have the men and women's apparel.
Oh, right.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so they've been doing that. This is their 3rd year. And so we normally will announce the winner at 5 o'clock at the very end, and you do not have to be present to win, because if you can imagine coming down at noon, and if we said you have to be present to win, that doesn't make sense. That's $5. So, but people do stay, though. I will say that. So that's kind of what they're doing to draw people down into their store. And then also they have like little cookies and whatnot. And then they also offer a discount, like maybe 20%. So for those of you who are, have your own business, and if you want to offer a discount, we can put that in there. So that people know, if they stop by, LaFleur's, there's a 15 or 10% or however you want to do that, or, free measurement, however you want to do that. But so again, thinking about what can you have and what can you do to really make this a really fun event. And again, this has been one in which we look forward to, but I think a lot of people in the community, and it's not just for North Omaha residents, even though we did it purposely in North Omaha because we wanted folks who couldn't maybe, have a way to get transported down to some of these other places that have beautiful events. We wanted to have something here. And so if you want to come here, we've got now a lot of people who are coming that don't live in North Omaha, but they're coming down here to really enjoy. And I'll tell you, coming down here sometimes for the first time to North Omaha. And so again, that's another way to just kind of break down some of those misperceptions of what North Omaha is all about. And this is a great time, again, have your business cards ready to, talk to the customers and let them know, hey, our next event is going to be, or put them on your mailing list some way or somehow, get them so that anything that you're doing and they love, your product or service, make sure that you get them on that mailing list so that anything that you're doing, you can have them come down. Okay? And I think the last thing that I have, see, I'm leaving you with a lot of goodies. The last thing that I have is a map. Now, this map is from last year, so, don't take it to heart, please. And there's two pages. But the map is what we actually put in the bag. So the map kind of lays out where everything is at. So if somebody says, hey, go visit the so-and-so, they can kind of look on the map and they can be guided that way. So as you can see, that map, there's a whole lot of things going on that map, and there's a lot of new things that are happening this year too. So that just kind of gives you a history of how this even started. It was just something we said, you know what, Willie Barney said, I think we should have something in the village and have some kind of a tradition. And I said, great, maybe we can do it next year. And he said, no, I think we should do it this year. And so that's how it just kind of started. And again, just rounding out the partners and starting it that way. And I will say again, the activities that everyone is having, they're paying for it themselves. And so when you look at the activities that OEDC is having, the tent that they're having, they're paying for it. Omaha Star, they're actually partnering with the library to get free books. You've got family housing, they're doing free family portraits. So if you have families who want to take free pictures, certainly do that. The Loves Jazz, in terms of the holiday boutique, we've got vendors that are actually investing in themselves and saying, I'll purchase a booth. The Live Nativity Scene, that and the Barricades and several other things, the Empowerment Network is actually footing that bill, like the carriage rides and so on and so forth, because we feel that that's certainly important and we want to just keep that going. So a lot of investments going on here, but we also like to get sponsors and grants, and Nebraska Arts Council, we have a mini grant with them. So a lot of things going on.
Can I ask you a question? Have you reached out to the other business beyond Ohio and Burdette on putting up Christmas decorations? Because it would be nice if, the whole 24th Street, the business and everybody would put up some decoration for Christmas,
Yeah, I have not, Miss Ella. Actually, all I've done is have a lot of flyers that were passed out, and some, I shouldn't say a lot, because I only had a few. But we do encourage a lot of the businesses, because you get, for instance, like down in the Old Market, they have what's called the Old Market Merchants Association. And so what they have done, and I know this from working with the city, is that they all pool their resources together. So if they want lights, they have to pay for the lights. But they also encourage each business to actually have something nice, on the exterior of your building, so that, it just really looks nice. And it's not just about Christmas in the village, but it's about that whole season.
Yeah.
And, that whole month. So it's really, really nice. Even if you think about the wreaths that are put on the poles, I don't know if some of you noticed that, but that's something that the network pays for. And that was something that I wanted to not just have, neck poles. I said, it'd be nice to have some wreaths on there. And so we just decided from Burdette to Ohio to just every other pole, I believe it is to have a wreath, so that when you come down here, it looks really nice and festive. So if you know of any wreaths that are on sale right now, I got them from Home Depot before, but again, it's all about investment. And I'll have to do a shout out to John Skanes, who works with the work release program. And they really help with setting up the barricades that Saturday morning and then taking them down. So I couldn't, not do it without them. So he really has been instrumental in every year having some folks that can help me, because that's a lot of work. If you can imagine having to block the streets between about 6 different blocks, that's quite a bit. But again, we want to make sure that safety is the utmost, especially when you're, talking about families and children, and wanting to make sure that they don't, little boogers don't get run over, So that's why we do block the streets off. But anything that you can do to help us really promote and get that word out, because we want people to really come down here, and because most of the things are free. I mean, if you want to, of course, with snow coolers. Did I say that right? The cooler. Everything cool. I mean, bring some money, bring some cash, bring your credit card, because there's some things that you can't support, our businesses, but there's a lot of things that are free as well. And so we really enjoy doing this. So, all right. Any other questions?
Yes.
Yeah.
You mentioned that there was going to be some wreaths put up. Did you guys discuss the decorations as a whole? Because we kind of like it to be uniform, and that's what we're here for, 24th Street Corridor Alliance. We would rather it be a collective effort in terms of the color scheme. We wouldn't want it to be, one end this way and the other end that way. So we kind of need to talk about what that might look like.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you, the bags are going to be red. It's a red bag and gold lettering. So that's what we got in terms of color. But we really don't have a theme color, if you think about it. So I would say, and if you think about Christmas colors in and of itself, so which is the beauty of it, because now it's like whatever you do, it falls in line with, the holiday and the event. So we really don't have a theme. The wreath that we put up is, of course, it's red, and it's really simple, and it's not really, there's not a lot on it, but it's a wreath and it's got some red in it and whatnot. So that's the only thing that we have in terms of a color scheme that's going down the street. But again, whatever any business does would be complementary to what we're already doing. And so when you're talking about Christmas colors, you're talking about blue, green, red, whatnot. So even just to have lights around the windows is something where it's a draw, and it's really nice. And it could be seen even in the evening because it gets, it gets darker earlier. So yeah, so hopefully that opens it up to whatever color you want to use would be great. Yeah. Any other questions? How many of y'all coming to Christmas in the village? Stop by. So again, it starts at noon and it ends at 5 o'clock. And so there's just a whole host of things. So make sure that you tell families and, especially people with children, because this is something that when you're talking about a carriage ride and you're talking about live animals and you're talking about a camel, these kids' eyes are lit up. And sometimes this might be the only festive event that they go to this year, in addition to some of the other things that are going on, but this might be the only one.
Do you go to the media? Do you go to the television stations and talk about this? Okay,
Yes. So the Morning Blend, and then also I have a good partner relationship with Deb Ward at the Convention and Visitors Bureau. So I just emailed her and said, Deb, can you get me on that Friday? So she's got me all ready, set to go. The Morning Blend, if they have an opening, I always go on there with the Omaha Stars. So we do get that mass media out. KETV, we haven't asked them yet, but they generally will run a promo video, and so that's another way to kind of get it out there to the masses. But a lot of times, we have, this will be my bag, I promise, this is my bag. A little thing that I pass out. But this is what you can, take with you, and here you go. Have with you, but again, that was our save the date. So we've sent it out to like our email listing that goes out to over 2,000 people. We've had it on at our community meeting table, so that's just a way for us to get that information out. But again, what I can do is to provide Juanita with some updated flyers once we get that. And then Juanita, if you could help distribute some of that to the 24th Street Corridor businesses. Okay. So we're finalizing that flyer, and whatever you can do to help get that information out. And as your businesses or your customers are coming in, share that information with them, or provide them with that flyer, because again, they need something in hand to remember the date, the time, and the location.
Since there are several schools in the area, if you thought of getting some information out to the schools, so they can pass that out on to the parents and to the students.
Yeah. One of the things that I think for the last few years, because the word Christmas is in there, they kind of, I don't think that, if I'm not mistaken, I don't think they send it out to the schools. However, to the TAC building, we do send it to them. And then they put it, I think, in their elevator and whatnot. But because the word Christmas is in there, now I can't go underground and do it another way, because I don't want to get...
No.
I want to get around.
But yes. right. Everything's legal. So yes, I mean that would be, but again, the churches, that's another way to, any way that we can get that information out. So even the pastors and faith leaders meeting that we have, they can get that information out to them. Or we will send them like a PowerPoint slide, and all they have to do is just put it on their, announcement. And then, you got the word out there. So anything that we can do to really look at, okay, where's there's a lot of people at, that's what we want to hit. But again, relying on you all as well.
All right. Well, thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
your time.
Thank you. Thank you.
We're going to have Jeff come up. And after Jeff, we're going to have a brief conversation with Brian. Ben, I'm sorry. Sorry about that. Ben Swan.
Thanks for having me, Juanita.
Thank you.
So I'm Jeff with the Metro Area Planning Agency, and we are located on 24th and Cumming. So I guess that makes us in the boundaries. So if we can be a member, we'd like to be a member. I'll show up every month.
We'd like to have you. Thank you.
So I want to talk about a few things, if I could. Just one, like kind of what MAPA is and what we do typically. And then we've been assisting with the City of Omaha on the Fair Housing Assessment. Just want to provide an update from the open house, and then also have some materials from our stakeholder meetings that we can go over a little bit, and then talk about the timeline for the next steps for that assessment as well. So MAPA is we're a few things, but in the Omaha area, so MAPA stands for the Metro Area Planning Agency. It's a 5-county regional planning agency in both Iowa and Nebraska. So typically we do community and economic development, grant assistance for smaller communities. We work with the City of Omaha in passing some federal grants through to the City of Omaha to provide staffing for a lot of like data management, geographic information systems, mapping. And then we serve in the Omaha Council Bluffs area as like a neutral third-party sort of convener for regional transportation decisions. So the federal government says that in cities and regions that have more than 50,000 people that cross more than one jurisdiction, like Douglas and Sarpy County, that you have to have a group like MAPA together to all the funds maybe come to MAPA, and then we bring those decision folks together in the cities, and we set priorities, investment, and then follow through on making sure that those cities, when it comes to transportation as in could be bike and bus and pedestrian activities and investment and planning and infrastructure. It could be road widening. So we do that for Omaha, Council Bluffs, and Sarpy County. So one thing we're interested in as far as MAPA goes is for the kind of continual and often and sort of ongoing engagement with our communities. So I'd like to know, like, from your perspective, like how you would like to be listened to. We don't necessarily need to just do another plan in order to have like engagement and bring people out. So I'd like some of your feedback on ways that you would like to be listened to as far as getting your priorities and the things that you're hearing about in your neighborhoods like out and being put into practice. Because MAPA has what's called a long-range transportation plan. Every 5 years we update that, and that sets some of the priorities, and then we make sure that like the City of Omaha is following through on that transportation plan. But we also have other transportation and coordination activities with Metro Transit, and like on 24th, Highway 75, Cumming Street, around here, Lake Street, to 30th, that kind of section, we have some other activities we want to see more of our funding go towards infrastructure improvements in the area. So we don't need to, like I said, have another planning process where you put stickers on a map and say, I want this there, So like we've got the plans, let's like move into implementing those plans. So just if you have some ideas on what you hear about in your kind of meetings and neighborhoods, like Is it surveys? Is it just coming to meetings like this? Is it
I was gonna-
workshops? What ways would you like to be involved? Like how can we listen to you more effectively? Really?
I was going to suggest now that you're going to be a part of this team, you'll have firsthand information on that when you're coming on a monthly meeting, right?
Right.
That's one way.
Yeah.
And so, and then we can collectively start thinking of other ways that we can get that information to you. Is that doable?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think the problem so much is getting the information out and getting communication. I think the follow-up process is where the difficulty lies, because we usually participate in putting in information, but the outcomes of those in most cases are minuscule. We don't see what we thought was going to happen, and then it gets back to the same point again. Well, what can we do? What can we do? But when we say that, we don't have a follow-up process. I don't know. It's because of not having enough of this community involved in the actual board activity, or a mechanism that organization like MAPA can constantly be perceived as it applies to different concepts and programs that the community has said that they want to have.
So do you think that part of that is a lack of effective feedback from places like MAPA to the community to say, you gave us this input here and this is how it has been implemented? Or is it we're not actually implementing what the community is saying they would like to see?
I would say both.
Yeah.
Let's look at transportation alone, and that's a key issue.
Right.
North Omaha historically has had difficulties, particularly as the town grew, with a lot of the manufacturers going in the western side. It's had difficulty in accessing those kinds of job opportunities, even shopping opportunities, because of the transportation. But that issue has never really been confronted as it applies principally to North Omaha. I know that the bus central port now aids a lot, but you still have to get from there to there.
That's right. That's right. And there's a lot of sort of factors in play as to why employment is moving further away. It's cheap to build, out there, where some of the employment, as we move towards dependence on an automobile, we've spread out, in the needs for a manufacturing site. Maybe it's a little more difficult, and I mean difficult isn't maybe a perceived difficulty to kind of imagine or how we might use an old manufacturing site in the older part of our city for something new. It takes some creativity and maybe some political will and leadership to make that happen. And what are the priorities of an employer, the Chamber of Commerce? There's a lot of voices kind of making some of those decisions, and MAPA is trying to change how we score our projects that come into us. So through it wasn't just through a project called Heartland 2050, which is a long-term regional vision, but in which Vicki is the chair of the Equity Engagement Committee and on the executive committee. But that project as a whole has helped us set kind of a new set of values or priorities for how MAPA will evaluate projects and what merit they have to receive funding. And so it needs to have an equity component to the project. It has to be a good use of taxpayer dollars. It has to be efficient, as in connected to existing infrastructure, to try to slow down some of the westward expansion that you're referring to. So as much as MAPA can kind of turn the ship around a little bit for what we invest transportation-wise in, we're trying to do that through that project. But MAPA we are led by a board of directors that are the mayors of the three largest cities, Omaha, Council Bluffs, and Bellevue, and then county commissioners and city council members. So we have a board of elected officials that have their own priorities as well. So we try to navigate that carefully.
So it's all elected officials basically to make up the governing board?
Yeah, that's the way that MAPA is set up by state statute, that we have that as the case.
one of the main things that within our neighborhood is that we've been considering, and we want a bike trail down 24th Street, and that's one of the things that is needed, and it is a safety device because so many people is riding the bicycle now.
That's right.
For transportation, and I want you all to push for a bicycle trail because for the last 6 years I've gone to the city concerning a bike trail. They come out, they investigate, nothing have been done as of yet.
So,
And the bike trail that we would like to see, that we did a survey on, is from Dodge Street all the way to the OPD plant in Miller. And I figure this is a safety, it's flat, and we need a bike trail. Well, some of the students goes to Central, and they don't have transportation. They can ride their bicycle if it was a safe place to go.
so there is a bike and pedestrian plan that MAPA puts together with the city of Omaha, and that's been identified as one of the corridors where we put in that bike lane. So it's in there as a matter of when the city of Omaha puts it in their capital improvement plan is when it will get accomplished.
But I know, see, this is the problem with the city. They might say they're going to do something,
Right.
and like I said, for the last 6 years, nothing have been done. And when they get that federal money, it is for a most needed area and for a poverty-stricken area, and they have not been putting the money where the money should go. And I was just wondering when the city was going to really take more interest in North Omaha, from I would say from Cummings Creek, no, from Lake Street, north.
So the projects that are inside of the capital improvement plan,
Yeah.
they can be moved up and down based on who's talking to elected officials and priorities. So
Listen, I said,
Contact
well, you all
her.
need to go and
Yeah.
talk about that safety bike trail for kids.
Ben.
Thank you for coming and for offering to join the group, first of all. Second, with regards to the streetcar and bike trails, the South Omaha funded and approved bike lanes along 24th Street from Leavenworth to Q Street. It's my understanding that all of the bike advocacy groups are going to basically ask that it not be built because of the way that it's being built. Basically, a lot of the groups think that it'll be the first cyclist death on a bike trail that's built because it's built really unsafe, and there are remedies for that. And I guess is MAPA involved with that? And then I don't know if you've seen the plan, but basically it's a recipe for cyclists getting buzzed and door jacked, and it actually has less pedestrian crossings and wider lanes for existing industrial traffic. And is this an industrial route also? Is North 24th?
So the same kind of treatment for a road diet south in Leavenworth and L is not the same way that they would be applying it towards north of Cummings Street.
Because that's classified as an industrial corridor. What is this classified as?
I don't know if it's the same or not, but I know that the context for this corridor, the city of Napa has a different sort of classification for how it would evaluate it than,
Okay.
Wait a
than
second.
north.
You said the city evaluates things differently than MAPA does,
Right,
but you guys are planning for the same area?
that's correct.
Okay.
It's really
But
special.
part of that
It's
is
really
that's
Another confusing.
it is because what we have is sort of MAPA and the City of Omaha Planning Department work together on a pretty effective basis, I think.
That's good.
Planning and public works maybe they have different sets of priorities, and so that's where I think I break down. I'm going to pass it on to
Interesting.
someone
Well,
who's not here.
It's
why
my
they don't
understanding
get,
that Public Works builds it and doesn't listen to planning or MAPA
yeah, and don't listen to the neighbors in the
or
neighborhood.
the neighbors.
Right.
We're getting it all figured out right now. Sorry.
It's kind of hitchhiking off the same thing, and I'm using this as a point of concern, not directly pointed at you. Okay, how long have you been in your position
5 years, almost 5 years.
in this area here?
Yeah, I mean for MAPA.
For MAPA, for this area here?
On MAPA, I mean I work in Douglas County, the 5-county area. So I don't just work between, Cumming Street and Lake Street.
So if we have issues as it applies to some of the things that are pertinent to our area, it would go to you? Or is there someone that works for you that is more district orientated as opposed to the wide base?
Right. No, we don't have that kind of like that granularity of focus for any of our positions. We have a staff of the planning staff. I think there's like 9 of us for the entire area, so we get split up a little bit. However, we do have in the planning process there's what's called the environmental justice areas. There's like technical process that we have to go through that ensures that our projects have what they would call robust and rigorous public engagement. And there's a number of us that are continually going out to the community and being active so we can ensure that what we're trying to recommend is what we're hearing from the community. But we don't have anyone that's where MAPPA and the City of Omaha, we sometimes overlap one another. The City of Omaha's planning department would have, in theory, it's supposed to be that they are more of the on-the-ground neighborhood level perspective, and MAPPA is providing the regional context for planning decisions.
Are you familiar with the planning that was initiated probably, might have been a little more than 5 years ago, as it applies to the development of Adams Park and Malcolm X?
Is this a plan that was
The original
developed by the
planning as it
city,
applies
or-
to how redevelopment of the city was going to work with Adams Park, and simultaneously Adams Malcolm X location was encumbered in that. You're not familiar with that?
No.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions about the planning process? Yeah.
Is there anything on the docket for the streetcar? Can you give us an update on the streetcar? Is 24th a part of that, or?
No, it's what is being proposed so far is the same that's been in the newspaper. It's part of it would be run from about 42nd Street through Blackstone down around the baseball stadium and back is what is being proposed right now and under study. But there's no other.
It's not any
update that I
further than
have.
that.
Not any further than
24th
that.
Street?
No, I mean not that MAPPA is involved with. No.
And they've had
The
this
folks
group-
that I would direct those questions to Derek Miller and Steve Jensen.
Sure.
I mean, really, like those were the two that worked the most on that project
Sure.
from our side. Yeah. So yes.
From my own understanding, can you go over again the role that MAPPA plays in regards to the federal funds that come into, that are designated for certain areas, and how your role at MAPPA relates to city, county, governmental officials in determining how that money is used?
Yeah. So MAPPA has in the 5 counties, which I'll define the 5 counties are Washington, which is like Blair, Douglas County, Sarpy County, and Iowa, Pottawatomie County, and Mills, which is just south of Pottawatomie. That 5-county area, we provide grant administration. So if it's economic development funding, if it's like the EPA, or maybe doing some disaster planning or resiliency planning or watershed management, we do all of that. We serve as like an extension of their planning staff. So if I'm the town of Glenwood, Iowa, they can't afford to have a planning staff. So MAPPA serves in that capacity for places like that. When it comes to transportation spending, that we have a smaller kind of defined area. We are in Council Bluffs, all of Douglas County, and all of Sarpy County. So those 2.5 counties, that's when we bring the public works, traffic engineering, planning departments, county commissioners together and set the goals and priorities for how we're going to spend transportation dollars. So most of that goes towards roadway improvements and roadway expansion. And that's partly due to old projects that are in the queue that personally I think are poor projects as far as inefficient use of our dollars for who's using it versus who's paying for it. like I mentioned, the Heartland 2050 project and sort of new staff turnover the last several years and kind of direction strategically for MAPA has been about really reinvesting in our urban kind of east of 72nd Street primarily for Omaha. And that's in trying to work in coordination with the Omaha Planning Department to make that. So that's our, as far as federal dollars that come to the area that relate to Omaha, that's our kind of perspective, is that we would invest in what we have currently, because we can't keep up with the infrastructure cost, the further expansion to the west. Just what we're already behind in keeping up with what we have. So we can't continue to invest in that area. And Omaha's growth will, if we keep growing the way we are right now, we will run out of room by 2042 to develop. So we need to think, about the highest and best use for our existing infrastructure. So our goals are adding housing, adding affordable housing, and I guess you would say density, just more people living inside of older neighborhoods for Omaha. That better serves and makes it easier for public transportation to work well. We are evaluating a lot of our, like 30th Street, 24th Street, 13th Street, these 4-lane roads that both directions, seeing if there's just too much of a width and too many lanes on those streets to provide for the capacity that it has. So doing what's called road diets, or taking a 4-lane street, seeing if we can narrow it down to 1 lane in each direction with a center turn lane, and then having a bike lane or something else with the existing space, like he's referring to in South Omaha. So, and then
is my perception correct that in regards to transportation dollars, MAPA helps to carry out the decisions of the governmental officials who are on the board, and they make the decision, and then MAPA just help to implement? Is that right?
The board of MAPA?
Yeah.
The board for MAPA approves our 5-year long-range transportation plan. They approve every year we have it's called a plan of work that says these are the projects we're going to work on this year. They approve that. But that, once it gets to the board, it's made its way through what's called the Transportation Technical Advisory Committee, TTAC, that meets every month. And then below that, we have this Coordinated Transit Committee. So it's making its way from through each committee to be approved. This is to make sure it's coordinated with Public Works for Council Bluffs, Public Works for Omaha Planning, and Sarpy County as well. So then it makes its way to the MAPA board, and I have not been to a MAPA board meeting where they have pushed back on any. It's always been a vote to approve everything we have. In Sarpy County, our goal right now is Sarpy County is growing at a rapid rate, and our long-range plan for growth in the region has kind of growth stopping about Highway 370 in Sarpy County. There's a ridge line south of that makes it difficult to develop. So we want to make sure that development stays inside of that north of Highway 370. Again, back to making the best of what we have today, because we'll be running out of room. So that's what our MAPA board approves our work and how we would allocate funding for the region.
Thank you.
Yeah.
One quick one.
Okay.
So I mean, MAPA can set the parameters, but are you an administrative organ reacting to local government, or do you actually establish policy and I mean, are you just kind of shuffling the cards and
Yeah,
and
right.
dealing with the dealt, or do you?
So our
establish
board from our strategic plan last year has said that MAPA should set the tone for how the region should grow. So the local communities would follow what MAPA sets as priorities. In the
But
past,
you don't
that has
set
not
the
been case.
priorities necessarily.
We
That's
do, as in with that the PTAC group like I mentioned before, where all those planning and public works people come together. We set the priorities together with them, for our region. MAPA does not have policy-making authority, though.
Okay.
That it's we'll work on with like local partners. So we can develop voluntary guidelines and then incentivize a city to do a project that fits with those guidelines through what we fund. Yeah.
Okay. So basically, for you to release federal funding to the municipalities, they have to be on board and in line with your priorities.
Who's on your board?
The MAPA board is made up of Mayor Matt Walsh from Council Bluffs, Mayor Rita Sanders from Bellevue, she's the chair of our board, Mayor Stothard, Claire Duda, who's a county commissioner, Ben Gray, city council, Gary Mixon, who's a Sarpy County commissioner, Carol Vinton is a Mills County commissioner, and it was Scott Bell, no, Tom Hannafin is the Pottawatomie County Commissioner. That makes us our board.
Elected?
They're all elected officials.
And they're open meetings.
That's right. And we meet the third Thursday of the month from 1:30 to 3 o'clock.
Yeah.
Our office is at 2222 Cummings Street.
Oh, okay.
So just up the street.
Okay, right up the street.
Yeah. And then our project Heartland 2050 is really a regional long-term vision. It's a grant-funded project in 2012 and 13, and we've since moved beyond the grant-funded portion of that, and now it's just part of our planning activities from MAPA. We also receive funding from the Peter Kiewit Foundation, Iowa West Foundation, and the Sherwood Foundation, a little bit of funding from them. And that project has ongoing committees, whether it's in housing development, infrastructure, equity and engagement, natural resources, kind of local foods related activity or air quality, water quality issues, bike and pedestrian connections. Those are all in the infrastructure committee. So those groups meet on a quarterly basis or sometimes a monthly basis depending on the group. But all of those committees and who to contact is on our website, heartland2050.org. And to connect it to the Fair Housing Assessment, MAPA, through the 2050 project, conducted a pilot for the Fair Housing. I think Meredith has came and spoke before from the planning department. So in 2014, we did a kind of a pilot version of that Fair Housing Assessment. It's called the Fair Housing Equity Assessment. And typically, in the past, these Fair Housing Assessments were completed by one or two staff members of a planning department. And they would look at how they spent their funds, the last CDBG funds, the last 5 years, and did it fit with their goals. And then they take a look at what's kind of impeding someone's ability today to access fair and high quality housing, and they set the goals and do it again. So through this pilot version that we had, it was required by HUD and the Department of Transportation. So we need to look at this a little more holistically. And housing is not something that is you either have more effective housing or at least less effective housing as a city just by dealing with housing. You have to look at education, transportation, economic development, environmental health. There's a whole list of things, right? So we put that together, and then the Housing and Urban Development said that's how we want to see this move ahead. So MAPA had experience in the outreach and engagement process from doing the Heartland 2050 vision, doing the Fair Housing Equity Assessment, that we partner with the City of Omaha to assist them on the engagement and outreach and facilitation of the stakeholder and open house meetings. Not all of them, but most, yes.
So was the Heartland 2050 plan, just so I understand it correctly, was that integrated as the transportation element of the City of Omaha master plan?
Not all of it. Our land use scenario, so our, like where we see housing moving ahead, the City of Omaha incorporated that into their.
Because you guys have the 60, like going from 100% on the fringes to 60-40 infill redevelopment, correct?
Right.
That was the Heartland 2050 plan?
That's right.
And then that got pulled in to the City of Omaha 2050 plan.
Yeah, but it was based on the development pattern to see the future, yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Well, where is this 2050 plan? Is this in print or is this on the website? Or?
Both.
There is?
Yeah. And when I come next month, I can bring copies of it. Yes. And so it has, not only is that like a plan, as in like we would like to see development look this way, it has an action plan as well. So each one of those committees has developed. These are our like outcomes, like what we want to see in 3 to 5 years, and then projects inside of that that hopefully could be completed in 18 to 36 months. But MAPPA doesn't have the funding to say, yes, go and do this project. It's more of a partnership and owned by the community to find funding or coordinate activities as well. So I can bring that next month as well. So the fair housing, like I said, so we assisted the city, and I have some copies of a number of the stakeholder meetings. How many of you were at the North Omaha stakeholder meeting that was held at MAPPA back in, I think it was August? No one. Okay, exactly. So, like, this is our issue. Like, the engagement needs to be ongoing, so we can, because we have some input from some stakeholders in North Omaha. You know, they're self-defined stakeholders, and but it's not a full picture at all. We'll never really get to the full picture, but so I have some feedback from that meeting that I can share. But we want to continually get more feedback, make sure that it's put in this plan. Yes?
Are you familiar with the term gentrification?
Yeah.
Do you recognize any areas within the Douglas County that process has been implemented?
My like personal opinion would be that, I mean, you're seeing its gentrification's impact on between 24th and 42nd Street, between Dodge and Center, Leavenworth area. That area has seen a lot of new development in the past 5 or 6 years, and it had generations of disinvestment that was sort of facilitated by westward expansion. And now that investment's coming back into the city, and there's displacement that's occurring in those areas.
That's a broad-based definition of gentrification. Are you familiar with the segregation laws of 1913 for Omaha?
I don't know about 1913. I mean, I'm aware of the redlining map for the Homeowners Loan Corporation of 1938 that was made for Omaha.
Those were able to be put in place because of the segregation law that was implemented in Omaha, Nebraska, restricting blacks from living and dealing with the white community altogether. It was 1913. You're not familiar with that?
I have not seen that, but I don't doubt that it's
But you do recognize the redlining and the school segregating and those kinds of things that went on between Cummings and, let's say, Benny Street. Mm-hmm. You familiar with that?
Yes. I know the neighborhoods that were defined as hazardous neighborhoods, that there wouldn't be any credit given to those neighborhoods due to the Homeowners Loan Corporation map of 1938, like I mentioned. But
and that the redlining was extended all the way up until probably the latter part of the 60s. You familiar with that?
Yeah, I mean it was made illegal in 1968, but yes.
Okay. When I ask about the historical kinds of things as it applies to the development of Omaha and the restrictions, particularly as it applies to, at that time, the black population, African Americans, it's hard to use that term now because there are other cultures that have been brought into the community whose genetic makeup is also black, even to the point where the identification of blacks in this community have been multiplied by Sudanese, Somalians, as applies to traditional African Americans. The African American population in this area has decreased over 40% because of housing redistribution through the authorities and other kinds of issues. I'm bringing this up because it's very difficult for a business community in North Omaha to gather interest when you don't have any control over ideas and concepts that have been brought to the front when they're all dissipated within governmental structures. You understand what I'm saying?
I think so.
We have a history of issues in North Omaha as it applies to blacks traditionally. minuscule of those complaints historically have been addressed. Here too, we're here today, we're talking about dealing with developmental plans. When you said that you didn't know about the industrialization, the area between 24th and 16th Cummings to Ames has been identified as industrial residential ever since the latter part of the 70s and 80s, where downtown Omaha would be going this way along with Creighton. Because of whatever kinds of activities, a lot of that has always been disrupted. Tearing down of the projects for redevelopment, misplacement of the people that are in the projects, all over. How is a community that is not accessed with individuals from the community to participate in those kinds of dialogues going to be able to gain confidence in its constituency that these things are not going to happen anymore?
I don't know. That's why I asked, like, if you all weren't at this meeting, then we need to continue.
We weren't at that meeting because there's no mechanism in place to communicate to our organization. We've met with the city planning department. They testify that 70% of the neighborhood organizations that they are accounted for are represented. They testify to that. For the last 30 years, it's been like that. So when you talk about getting out information to individuals, if you don't have a mechanism in place that's consistent in order for people to communicate those kinds of things, then you turn out with situations where we are not represented at all, and the so-called powers to be do what they want to do. And when we challenge them based upon those kinds of issues, they say, well, we didn't get that kind of information.
I think, Elijah, what Jeff is asking is he wants to get input from everyone here so that that won't happen, because he's trying to get ideas of, okay, what else can we do, MAPA, to, like when information or meetings are taking place, how can they best get that information out to the residents so that they don't hear about it on the 10 o'clock news, but that they're part of that discussion. So I think what he's trying to get is your input on what other ways can that information get out there, that if there is a public meeting and we want to get your input and ideas and so on and so forth. So I think that's what he was asking even from you.
But well, that's why I asked him the question if he understood the term gentrification. Because in all of our analysis, it's too late anyway. Because the basic needs that we have, the majority of our younger people and those who are still of the age to look at development have moved not only out of this area, but have moved out of Omaha. The population of blacks, African Americans in this town have decreased close to 10,000 since the last census. All right? So it's all well and good to come in now and say we want to do this and we're open-armed, because for all practical purposes, the wrongdoing that has been historical in this town since 1913 has never been rectified. The area that has to be developed as it applies to the development of downtown along the industrial part, which was predominantly earmarked for blacks because of the segregation laws of 1913, have been totally exacerbated and turned around. So to come in now in this late date and time talking about doing things as it applies to this corridor, we're not just talking about the black population, because they have been disseminated throughout this whole city, if no more the reason than like the housing authority, which is a sophisticated mechanism of redlining. So when you talk about being open and fair at this particular point in time as it applies to a geographical area, you're a day late and a dollar short.
Your point is well taken, I think, but I think what he's trying to do is he's trying to help the situation. So you have to start somewhere, honestly. You have to start somewhere.
Well, starting somewhere is all well and good, but when you have a history of being not only illegal, but totally racist in your dealings with a certain community, and now that damage has been put totally into effect For those new coming into the community and may be able to take advantage, whatever they may be able to take advantage of good, that's all well and good. But when the city gathers as much money as this city has on community block grant money historically, that has been identified to rectify a wrong that has been done historically, and it has not been done, then you don't say, okay, fine, everything's well and good, let's start on from here. Because those masses of people that have been misused and have not been rectified.
I don't think anybody's saying that things are well and good. You know, I mean, these injustices that have happened in the past, I wasn't here earlier, and I couldn't have done anything about it, and I'm sorry that it happened.
Sorries don't help. Sorries don't help.
What I would like to say that some of the redevelopment that they have started doing in North Omaha, from Ohio, which was on the east side of 24th Street. Now they begin. We're having a meeting on November the 18th on the redevelopment on the west side of 24th Street, and that meeting will be held at the Salvation Army. So they had said they're going to start in January on doing the redevelopment. But we also want business down on 24th Street, further north on 24th. And I have checked into some of the credit unions, and I talked with the city concerning on trying to get a credit union, a bank down here on 24th Street, and to find out what business is really coming down this way, beyond Ohio Street, on 24th Street. Because I think ODC, whatever it is, they stopped there at Lake Street.
So the feedback on October 24th, there was an open house that was held with the city of Omaha. They organized this open house.
Are those
There's a number of different meetings here that I have notes from. Yes, sure.
Was that the one on 20th? And,
it was on 20th and Capitol Douglas.
Capitol
Yeah.
Douglas.
So that meeting was held to say, here's all the feedback the city's received so far, and these are from the meetings that they held. This is the feedback they got. Then these were the most prevalent issues, and so some of the most prevalent issues that was identified over the meetings were there's institutional racism, there's a lack of affordable housing throughout the city, there is a lack of transportation, there's racial concentration of poverty in our city. So those are the issues that came up the most often. Access to jobs and housing was the sixth one. Then the next part was, that's what we heard from the meetings. Is that right or wrong? Is there more things we should add? Is it a high priority, low priority? Then there's strategies that has came up in the meetings, and they were around mandating an affordable housing policy, creating more mixed income neighborhoods, the increased funding for transportation, public transportation, incentivize development for businesses to locate on high frequency transportation networks, and then provide affordable housing throughout the entire city with the six. And that comes up in here. So that meeting was held to say, is this right, or do we get it? Do we hear it all? What's missing? And then the next step is, because that was one part you asked, is there will be public hearings on the draft of the document in late January, February, sometime in there. There's going to be 3 readings of that at the city. And that the city of Omaha will organize, and they'll be responsible for getting that communication out. And then the city of Omaha, city council, and the mayor have to approve that document. And that sets the goals and priorities for how the funding will be allocated in the next 5 years. Yeah. Does that make sense, kind of where it's going?
Not really.
Yeah, I was there.
On the timeline of the meeting. Yeah.
Saw the surveys.
So when did you say the public hearing was going to happen?
They would be, so they're still working, the city of Omaha is still writing up the fair housing assessment draft right now. We're waiting for a meeting with Omaha Public Schools to complete the education part of that. And then that will be completed in December, the draft, December, early January. And then there will be public hearings sometime, 3 readings of the document in sometime February, early March.
What's the point of the public hearings?
It's a requirement. And so one thing is, the public hearing's fine, is a thing to do, it's required. On a Tuesday at 2 o'clock, show up and listen. But what it means to have this sort of, what HUD would say is rigorous and ongoing engagement means that they need to do more than just have a public hearing. And that's why, like, I don't know what the city of Omaha is able to do in the future, but I'm telling you, it's like, as MAPPA, we're interested in ongoing engagement with this community and learning so that we can make better transportation decisions. I can't speak for what the city of Omaha would do.
The city council representative of this district, who is also the president of the city council, is on record stating, as it applies to the meeting held by the Fair Housing on that date that you was talking about, that he was not going to attend because upon his conversation with the organization, they could not even answer the most simplest questions as it applies to those definitions, institutional racism, segregation, all right? And he did not participate in that meeting. So what does that say about the validity of that particular meeting as it applies to a groundwork for setting trends that are going to go on in this area?
I can't say. I don't know what. I mean, I can't speak for his intention. I don't know why he wasn't in attendance.
He was not in attendance, and this is part of record on tape. He's not in attendance because on his conversation with that organization to put on that meeting, all right?
The planning department. You mean the planning department?
Whoever set up the fair housing meeting that was held at the Masonic place.
Pat Evans and Bill.
All right. They could not answer his simplest question as it applies to some of the things that we're bringing up as it applies to fairness. All right. And he would not attend it. If the president of the city council and the councilman of this district is not going to participate because he does not anticipate anything happening out of that meeting that's going to be beneficial to this area, then what are we as the community supposed to expect?
If you don't participate, we are not represented.
Then you need to ask Ben Gray that very question, why he did
How
not.
come he's not here?
Well, and the people that we're talking about is not here. That's what I'm saying. You know, you always have the answers of how to get by it, but you don't have the answers to get to it.
What MAPPA and the city is charged with is to get the input. So if there's folks who didn't participate, that's one thing, but what they're wanting to do is to have that feedback that they need, because they've got to pull that information up and give it to the federal government. So irregardless of one person or two or three cannot stop or shouldn't stop MAPPA from getting input from anyone here who would like to give their input and go. So, but I see your question in terms of what is the message. I don't know if Jeff is able to define or translate what that message is, but I think what they're saying is that, you know, they're wanting participation.
They have not set up any. They have not set up any mechanism to. They have not. MAPPA and the planning department. Planning department testifies to it. Have not set up any mechanism to gather the kinds of information they need to make a valuable decision. For the city planning department not to have developed a mechanism in its neighborhood organization that they speak to that 70% of the people in that area they cannot communicate to, all right? Then you need to stop and call time out. You don't need to just keep on going ahead making the same mistakes for 70 and 80 years. But if it doesn't matter because of the constituency that is in that area that you want removed anyway, then that seems that's automatic. And that's the point that I'm bringing to it. When I spoke about the gentrification, it is all well and good, but the destruction of this community as it applies to the population has already taken place, where businesses in this area are starving because they don't have that kind of movement.
Any other questions?
I have a question that kind of piggybacks on something Elijah said a while ago. He mentioned like we're creating plans for development, but where people from this community aren't the ones that are developing businesses. And I've talked to 3 really energetic young people just in the past month who all are from the North Omaha community and want to invest in themselves and in a business. And this isn't necessarily a question for Jeff, but more just like everyone in the room. Like, what good business incubators are available in North Omaha? Like, I don't know necessarily to send them. Like, I think in theory, that's what Omaha Economic Development Corporation could help them with. But in reality, I don't know if they could help some small starter.
Just real quick, anyone that's interested in a business and really to look at, do you do a feasibility study, do you do a this and that? Omaha Small Business Network is a really good place to start, and they even have, I think, a lot of resources. They've got, depending upon where your level of business is at, they've
If
got
it's at like
space.
ground zero, if it's just the
Julia
idea of
Parker
inspiration.
at Omaha Small Business Network can really take them through a process to see where they're at and to really help them, because that's what we want, entrepreneurs. But we've also got to have mentors talking to them as well. So I would say Omaha Small Business Network, Julia Parker, is a fabulous person that they really need to get connected to.
Okay, awesome.
When you have a meeting and when you have a group meeting, how do you get that word out? What organizations, what neighborhood organizations do you go to get that
So
word
for
out?
so there was on this project, there was a number of stakeholder meetings. So I'm just saying, like, if I'm someone that works in transportation, I'll give my name. If I work for real estate development, if I work for schools, disabled community, there were meetings for like those groups that were open to the public, and we invited everybody, but they were targeted towards those folks. And then we also had open house meetings and went to talk to neighborhood associations as well about the project. The main kind of mechanism for feedback from the broader, like all of the Omaha area, was a survey in which there were 1,700 people that completed that survey.
How many?
1,700.
Where at?
The survey.
Where was that done at?
It was, they in zip codes all throughout the city. However, I will say, primarily the feedback on the survey came from mostly, like over 70% white, educated, college educated, and zip codes west of 132nd Street. So to control that, they removed those respondents from the survey and then looked at what was left of it to see if what they were receiving was right.
And what geographical areas were those that were taken?
I think Juanita's been given a breakdown of all the zip codes from that survey, and that I would refer to that. I don't know.
And they were mailed out?
There was paper surveys. They were also done electronically. They were given out, and like there was paper surveys.
Somebody electronically through internet?
Yeah. Like
we even had a meeting, like our community meeting that we had in September.
Yeah.
We actually focused primarily on that because we knew that we wanted to hear from North Omaha, so everybody at that meeting actually participated in that survey.
Are you saying we? Who was we?
Well, the Empowerment Network, our community meetings. That we do.
Yeah, I know.
But
everybody else
that was,
knows.
okay, everybody
So
that was 5
years and we don't hear anything.
So like that, like one way for neighborhoods we counted on working through One Omaha neighborhood alliances to communicate to neighborhood association leaders of when the stakeholder meetings were held, when the open house meetings were held,
And
public meetings.
I know a lot of the stuff when we did was because I've been to several of the surveys that we put on the survey.
I had them broken out by.
Have been done since we did the survey. Because we had surveys at the Empowerment Network. We have had survey over at Union Contemporary Art. We had a survey at my neighborhood association, and nothing have been done as of yet concerning the things that we want in our neighborhood.
Well, and I would like to make a point, since you said that you worked with One Omaha distributing the survey, for the audience members.
Yeah.
I talked to many people about how they should distribute this survey, and like they did take some measures that I recommended, but really like comprehensively, like no. When I said like how to really get it absorbed into the communities that they need to, there was no follow through.
And I will say that there was not enough engagement on the whole project as a whole, period, but also in neighborhoods in South and North Omaha and East Omaha. Like I don't think they did enough. It's
right.
And they just
But do you understand what you're saying?
Yes, I'm saying like there's they can always do more engagement, but also I don't think we have an accurate representation of maybe the most prevalent issues regarding housing and the most significant factors and the best strategies. I don't think we have it accurate because we don't have a wide enough voice and representation in the project.
They said enough of us do not show up at the meetings when they have these things on.
Not, at his level, that's not what he's saying. He's saying that those who make the final decision are not listening. That's what
I'm
he's saying.
The strategies and recommendations out of here are based on the feedback that was received from those that showed up at any of the meetings that were held.
As you're saying, not enough people showed up.
But
Maybe
there's
they didn't
always
know
like,
about
I mean,
it or
there's
whatever.
1,700 respondents to the survey, but it could have been 5,000. We had, several hundred people show up to meetings, but we could have had several thousand. But there's always more that could be done.
Don't that mean sure about West?
My question is, are you joining this group?
Yeah.
I think that's probably the best way.
Yeah,
to
great
get more
point, Aaron.
information.
Yeah.
Not if it's not advocacy.
Yeah, and so I have to go to a meeting actually with the city of Omaha about this project at like 1:15. So, any other?
Thanks for coming, Jeff.
I'll be here next month.
All right, we now have Ben Swan.
Hey, real quick, everybody. Just want to give you an update on the Carnation Ballroom. Earlier, so last Thursday, it was put forth for the Landmark Preservation Committee, and it was nominated as a local landmark. So that kind of protects it a little bit. If any owner, myself or a future owner, wants to tear it down, they have to go past and get approval from the Preservation Committee, I believe. It also kind of legitimizes the cultural heritage of that building and formalizes the cultural heritage, recognizes it. So if somebody was going to ask for assistance in funding to maintain or preserve or improve the building, it gives it that additional leg of credibility. It's also a requirement primarily to get it on the National Register of Historic Places, which would make it eligible to receive federal and potentially state funding as a historic landmark that's federally recognized. So the Carnation is officially a local landmark. It passed on its cultural merit, not on the architectural merit. Those are the two ways that you can look at a building. And I actually have the PowerPoint that Restoration Exchange did to nominate it. They wrote up the nomination. And if anybody wants me to email that to them, or I can bring it next week. It was a beautiful write-up. I talked a lot about the history of the neighborhood. About 98% accurate, from what I could tell. But they did a lot of work, and yep, thank you, Jeff. Yeah, I'll share that with you, Juanita. It's a great PowerPoint. It has a lot of articles of performances and also local neighborhood events, balls, beauty contests. It just really showcases what that building was during the Carnation period especially. And then also I just want to introduce Stephanie Clark. She's with MP Dodge. You want to tell a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, thank you for letting me speak briefly, and thank you for welcoming me to the meeting. I appreciate it, and invited me, and I'm glad that I came. It's really, really interesting. I am a licensed realtor in Nebraska and a commercial real estate agent specifically, so I help people buy and sell properties. I also help landlords and tenants with representation. So, for example, like this building, the landlord of this building wants a tenant. This is a great tenant that they found in this place, and I would help set lease rates, price per square foot, and then kind of help them just make sure with lease renewals to renew. So if you ever need services or know of somebody who needs services, I'm offering my services. And if you need a card, a business card, just let me know. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But that's it. That's all.
I'm going to be engaging Stephanie to work with me on the Carnation, and finding good use for it going forward. Yes, sir.
Did anything about the roller rink come up
The roller rink?
at the Carnation?
I'm not sure.
In the documentation that you read, was there anything about it being a roller skating ring at any given point in time?
No, I do not believe so. So it was mainly the ballroom where it was, music and performance venue.
Huh?
That's so fun.
Is there any photographic evidence of that?
Yes.
If there's old photographs of that, Restoration Exchange would love to document that.
Has he gone into the Omaha Stars archives?
They definitely did look in the Omaha Star archive.
Who is they?
Christine Gerber and her 2 interns that she had working on the project doing the write-up. Yeah. So anyway, thank you, you guys. Just want to give you an update there.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Dan.
Elijah, you should share.
I'm tired of sharing. I'm tired of sharing.
Written, huh?
Falls on deaf ears.
Yeah, thank you very much.
All right, thanks everyone for coming. Our next meeting will be held here on December the 11th at 11:30. Looking forward to seeing everyone. Again, this is 24th Street Corridor Alliance, and once again, thanks everyone for coming. And happy holidays.
Yeah.
There is a career fair on Thursday from 5 to 8 at Blackburn High School. So if anyone is looking for a job, there will be all kinds of employees there that are going to be hiring on the spot. So send them that way. This Thursday, 5 to 8, Blackburn High School. Thank you.
Thanks, Juanita.
What's your email address?
Longschoolneighborhood@gmail.com.
The date of the next meeting?